How could you sell the condo? Eric's voice thundered through the empty apartment, his face red with fury. Lila stood behind him, sobbing dramatically into her hands, but I remained calm. There's something else you should know, I said quietly. The words froze him. His expression shifted, confusion first, then dread. His hands trembled the way they used to when he was a child caught in a lie. Mom, we don't have anywhere to go, he stammered. You can't just do this. But inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, victory. Because for most of my life, I was the one shaking. I was the one begging. I was the one who lived in fear. My name is Helen Grace, I'm 65 years old, and until 6 months ago, I was invisible, to my son, to my daughter-in-law, and even to myself. The condo I sold wasn't fancy. The wallpaper was peeling, the kitchen small, the floors creaked with every step. But it was mine. It was the last piece of the life I built with my late husband, Thomas. He died in his sleep 7 years ago, no pain, no warning, just gone. Since then, my world has become silent and colorless. Every morning I made coffee in the same old percolator that wheezed like it might fall apart any day. I'd sweep the floor, stare out the window, and wait, though I didn't know for what. Maybe for my son to call. Maybe for something to remind me I still mattered. But Eric was busy, too busy. After his father's death, I hoped we'd grow closer. Instead, he drifted further away. Calls came less often, visits even less. And when he did visit, it was always the same. Hey, Mom. How've you been? I'm fine, sweetheart. You? Good. Just, busy. Then silence. He'd sit there scrolling on his phone, checking his watch every few minutes. I'd offer coffee, he'd refuse. I'd try to talk, he'd nod absently. Every visit ended with the same hollow hug and the same ache in my chest. Still, I smiled. Because that's what mothers do. We smile through the hurt, through the loneliness, through being forgotten. Then came Lila. She was all charm in the beginning, Mama Helen, she'd call me, smiling wide, bringing cheap supermarket flowers I didn't need but cherished anyway. For a while, I believed her warmth. Until I started noticing the glances, the kind that measure, that calculate. That's when I realized, to her, I wasn't family. I was real estate. And that was when the story truly began. That night, as I washed the dishes in silence, I didn't know it yet, but the next words I'd overhear from my son would shatter everything I believed about love, loyalty, and family. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. The kind that blurs into all the others when you live alone. I was in the bathroom washing my hands when I heard the sound of keys at the door. Eric and Lila hadn't told me they were coming. Their voices drifted down the hallway, low and casual at first, until one sentence made my breath catch. How much do you think this place is worth? Lila asked. I froze. Eric's tone was careless, like he was talking about a used car. Maybe 280? 300 if Mom ever decides to fix it up. With that, Lila said, we could finally buy a proper house. A big one. I heard the excitement in her voice, and the coldness in his reply. She won't sell. But she's not gonna live forever, Lila. And when she's gone, it's mine anyway. Lila let out a small laugh of relief. Thank God. I don't know how much longer I can pretend to like her. That last line broke something inside me. It was as if a mirror cracked, the reflection I had of my son, of our love, splintered beyond repair. I stayed in the bathroom, one hand over my mouth to stifle a sob. But it wasn't sadness that flooded me, it was awakening. For years, I had excused their behavior, their indifference, their cruel little comments. But this? This was something else. When I finally stepped out, Lila looked startled to see me. Oh, Mama Helen. We didn't know you were home, she said, feigning surprise. A lie. They knew. They just didn't care. Eric sat on the sofa, eyes glued to his phone, pretending nothing had happened. I offered them coffee, they declined, of course, and a few minutes later, they were gone. When the door closed behind them, I sat on that same sofa, staring at the space where they had been. My hands trembled, not from weakness but from something colder, realization. For years I'd been waiting, for love, for appreciation, for gratitude that was never coming. That night, as I lay awake listening to the distant hum of traffic, I made a decision. No more waiting. No more silence. No more being invisible. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew I would do something. Because if they were already waiting for me to die, then I might as well start living first. The next morning, I woke up different, and by the time I picked up that old notebook from my drawer, I had no idea it would become the weapon that changed everything. The morning after that revelation, something inside me hardened. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just sat at the small kitchen table with a cup of lukewarm coffee, staring at the peeling wallpaper and thinking, no more. I opened the drawer where I kept old letters and bills, and there it was, an unused spiral notebook. I flipped it open, picked up a pen, and started writing. Every insult, every sigh, every time Lila rolled her eyes, every time Eric checked his watch while I talked. I wrote until my fingers cramped. When I finally looked down, 5 full pages glared back at me, proof that I hadn't been imagining it, proof that my pain had roots. And I realized, I wasn't crazy. I was conditioned. Conditioned to believe that love meant silence. 2 weeks later, Eric and Lila showed up again, unannounced as always. "Mom," Eric began, using that forced gentle tone he saved for when he wanted something, "we need to talk." I didn't answer, just nodded. "We've been house hunting," Lila said, clutching his arm. "We want to start a family, but everything is so expensive. We were thinking, maybe you could sell this condo to us. You know, at a family price." A family price. The words were dipped in honey but meant poison. "I'm not ready to sell," I replied evenly. "This home has too many memories." Eric frowned. "Mom, don't be selfish. You don't need a place this big. You should be thinking about your family, about us." His words landed like a slap. I took a breath, steady but cold. "And what about me, Eric? Shouldn't I think about myself for once?" He blinked, stunned that I'd even said it. Lila stepped in quickly, her eyes glistening with fake tears. "We've already made plans, Mama Helen. We were really counting on this." Plans. They had made plans with my life, with my home, as if I were just a name on a deed waiting to disappear. I said nothing more, only that I'd think about it. They left, convinced I would cave. I always did. But not this time. That night, I sat by the window as the city lights blinked below. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt awake. I didn't know what my next move was, but I knew one thing for certain: if they wanted this condo so badly, I'd make sure they'd never have it, not now, not ever. And the very next week, one overheard conversation at the bank would give me the boldest idea of my life, one that would turn their plans upside down. The following Friday, I went to the bank. It wasn't for anything major, just to update some personal information. I sat in the waiting area, flipping through a wrinkled magazine, when I overheard 2 women talking behind me. "My mother-in-law finally sold her house," one said. "She bought herself a small condo and is traveling the world. Says she's done living for everyone else." The other laughed softly. "If I did that, my family would never forgive me." The first woman replied, "It's her life, her money. Why should she need anyone's permission?" Those words hit me like a lightning bolt. Why should she need anyone's permission? I sat there frozen, heart pounding, realizing how much I'd been living under invisible rules. Rules I didn't agree to. Rules that said a mother's life ends when her children's begins. When I left the bank that day, I didn't just walk out, I marched out with purpose. For the first time in years, my decision was clear. I was going to sell the condo. But not to Eric. Not to Lila. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the same one that had seen countless lonely dinners, and searched real estate listings online. My hands trembled slightly as I typed, "How to sell property quietly." I found a small agency nearby with good reviews. The next morning, I called. A pleasant woman answered, "Good morning, Harmony Realty. How can we help?" "My name's Helen Grace," I said. "I want to sell my condo, quickly. And I'd prefer not to make it public." There was a short pause. "We can send an agent tomorrow to appraise it," she said. "Perfect," I replied. When I hung up, my whole body felt electric. I had taken the first real step toward freedom, and it terrified and thrilled me at the same time. The next day, a middle-aged man named Mr. Clark arrived. He wore a gray suit and carried a calm smile. After walking through the place, taking photos and notes, he said, "Mrs. Grace, you could get around 270, maybe 280 if you're patient." "I'm not patient," I said. "Sell it fast." He hesitated. "Wouldn't you like to consult your family first?" I looked him dead in the eye. "No. This is my decision." He nodded respectfully. "Then let's get started." A week later, the offer came in, a young couple moving for work, cash payment, no loans. I didn't even blink. "I accept," I told him. As I signed the papers, a strange peace settled over me. I wasn't scared anymore. I was free. But freedom has a price, and I knew the day Eric found out what I'd done, that peace I'd just found would be tested like never before. The sale moved faster than I ever imagined. Within 3 weeks, everything was finalized. The papers were signed, the funds transferred, and the old condo, my prison of quiet tears, was no longer mine. Eric kept calling during that time, his voice wrapped in fake warmth but sharp underneath. "Mom, did you think about what we talked about?" "Mom, we found the perfect house, but we need the down payment soon." Each call was another attempt to tighten the leash, but I stayed calm. "I'm still thinking, sweetheart," I'd say. While he waited for me to give in, I was quietly packing boxes. I kept only what truly mattered, old photos, a few books, the wedding ring I still wore on a chain. Everything else, I donated or sold. The day I moved into my new place, the silence felt different. It wasn't lonely anymore. It was peaceful. The one-bedroom condo was smaller, brighter, with sunlight that painted the walls golden in the morning. No ghosts. No expectations. No one with a spare key. I paid for it outright, $175,000. The rest, I invested under my name. My future, secure. My freedom, priceless. I made a cup of tea, sat by the window, and let the reality sink in. I'd done it. I had taken control of my life again. But deep down, I knew this calm was temporary. Eric still thought the condo was waiting for him, waiting for them. And when he discovered the truth, it would be a storm like no other. So, I prepared. I put every document neatly into a binder, the sale agreement, the transfer papers, the bank statements. I even printed screenshots of my accounts. And most importantly, I saved the recordings. Yes, recordings. Over the last few months, I had quietly started recording my conversations with Eric and Lila, the ones where they spoke of my home as though I were already gone. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it to protect myself. Because I knew what desperation could drive people to. Then one evening, as I arranged the last of my books on the new shelf, the phone rang. Eric's name flashed across the screen. "Mom," he said brightly, "Lila and I want to take you out for dinner this Friday." It's been too long. I froze. Eric never offered dinner. Never. "Sure," I said slowly. "What time?" 7. "Our treat," he said cheerfully. When I hung up, I smiled faintly. I knew exactly what they were doing, trading their pressure for pretense. They thought they could charm me this time. But they didn't know that by Friday night, I'd already be 3 moves ahead, and this dinner would become the turning point of everything. Friday arrived sooner than I expected. I took my time getting ready, not to impress them, but to remind myself who I was. I wore a deep blue dress I hadn't touched in years, brushed my hair, and added a faint touch of lipstick. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who had finally stopped apologizing for existing. At 7 sharp, Eric's car pulled up in front of my old building. He still thought I lived there. I let him wait 5 minutes before coming down. When he saw me, he frowned slightly, surprised. "Mom, you look nice," he said, as if the words were foreign to him. "Thank you, dear," I replied calmly, slipping into the back seat. Lila turned around with her perfect practiced smile. "Mama Helen. Oh, we've missed you." Her tone was sweet, but her eyes were ice. We drove in near silence until we reached a small Italian restaurant. Cozy, but private, too private. Eric had chosen the corner table far from other diners. I knew why. We ordered. I chose a salad I didn't intend to eat. Lila ordered pasta, Eric a steak. They talked about harmless topics at first: work, weather, and small gossip. I waited, stirring my drink, until the real reason surfaced. It came halfway through the meal. Eric set down his fork, wiped his mouth, and leaned forward. "Mom, Lila and I have been talking. We're worried about you. You're living all alone in that big condo, anything could happen." I almost laughed at the performance. "Is that so?" I asked lightly. "Yes," Lila added, her voice dripping with concern. "We think you should move closer to us. Or sell the condo and buy something smaller, safer, maybe even lend us a bit for the new house. Think of it as an advance on inheritance." An advance on the inheritance. The words were so brazen, I nearly choked on my water. I met her gaze evenly. "You two have really thought this through." "Of course," Eric said, missing the sarcasm. "It's the sensible thing to do." I smiled, slow and steady. "I'll think about it." That was all it took to wipe the warmth off their faces. "Mom, we've been patient," Eric said, frustration creeping into his tone. "You can't keep stalling. We already told the realtor we're ready to buy. We just need the down payment." Lila sighed dramatically. "We're doing this for the family, Mama Helen." Family, I thought bitterly. The word they used like currency. I finished my drink and stood. "Thank you for dinner," I said. "It's good to know what family means to you." Their faces fell as I walked away. I could feel their eyes burning holes into my back. That night, I realized the battle lines had been drawn, and the next time they came for me, it wouldn't be with smiles and dinner. It would be war. After that dinner, the calls started again. Only now, they were constant. Morning, afternoon, night, my phone never stopped buzzing. "Mom, please, we need an answer." "Mom, we can't hold the house much longer." "Mom, you're making this harder than it has to be." Each message chipped at the patience I had left, but I didn't give in. Every time I heard that phone ring, I just whispered to myself, "Stay strong." Then came Lila's messages. Long, sugary texts filled with guilt and manipulation. "Think of the grandkids you'll have someday. Don't you want us to have a good home for them? We're only asking because we love you, Mama Helen." Every love she wrote felt like another knife in my back. Days turned into weeks. My resolve hardened. And then one afternoon, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, Lila was standing there, mascara smudged, eyes red. "Mama Helen, please. Can I come in?" I hesitated, but curiosity won. I let her inside. The living room was nearly empty, just a few boxes left. She looked around, clearly surprised. "Where's all your furniture?" she asked softly. "I'm redecorating," I lied. She nodded, sitting down on a bare chair. "I came to apologize. I know we've been pushy. But things are hard, and we thought maybe you could help us start over." Her words sounded rehearsed, every syllable carefully chosen to pull at my heart. I folded my arms. If I didn't own this condo, would you still visit me? She blinked. Of course. What kind of question is that? Then why, I asked, have you only called to talk about the condo these past months? Why do you never ask how I am? Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The silence between us said everything. Finally, she stood. I think I came at a bad time, she whispered. You did, I replied quietly. As the door closed behind her, I felt something unexpected, peace. Not anger. Not guilt. Just peace. Because her silence had told me more truth than her words ever did. That night, I gathered all my documents, the sale papers, the new deed, the recordings, and put them neatly in a folder. My fortress of proof. I knew it was only a matter of time before Eric came storming in. And this time, I'd be ready. The next time I saw my son, he wouldn't come asking, he'd come demanding. But he had no idea that I'd already turned his final threat into my greatest weapon. It happened 2 weeks later, exactly as I'd expected. That Saturday morning, I was enjoying a quiet cup of coffee by the window of my new condo when my phone rang. It was Eric. His voice was clipped, cold. Mom, I'm coming over. We're finishing this today. Before I could respond, he hung up. I stared at the phone for a moment, my heart thumping, not from fear, but from anticipation. This was the moment I'd been preparing for. I changed into something simple, beige slacks, a pale blouse, tied my hair back, and grabbed the folder of documents. Then I drove to my old condo. The new owners weren't moving in until next week, so I still had a key. The place was almost empty now. The echo of my footsteps bounced off the bare walls. I sat on the floor near the window and waited. 15 minutes later, the door burst open. Eric stormed in, followed by Lila, both looking frantic. What the hell is going on? He shouted. Where's the furniture? Where's everything? I stood slowly, calm and composed. It's gone, I said. I sold it. You sold the furniture? Lila cried. Not just the furniture, I said evenly. The condo too. Silence fell like a stone. Eric blinked, then his face twisted with disbelief. You what? I sold it, I repeated. 3 weeks ago. The papers are signed, the money's in my account, and the new owners move in next week. His voice cracked into a shout. How could you sell it? I promised it to my wife. That place was supposed to be ours. Lila clutched her chest dramatically, tears streaming. Mama Helen, how could you do this to us? We needed that home. I didn't flinch. That home was mine. It never belonged to you. Eric's face turned red. You're my mother. That was my inheritance. I let out a humorless laugh. Inheritance? You're 38 years old, Eric. You have a job, a wife, and your health. You were already planning what to do with my things before I was even gone. That's not inheritance. That's greed. Lila stepped forward, shaking. We just wanted to start a family. You ruined everything. I didn't ruin anything, I said softly. I just stopped being your plan. Eric's voice broke into a snarl. Then at least give us the money from the sale. I met his eyes and said, no. But what they didn't know was that I held more than the money, I held proof. And once they saw it, every lie they'd told would crumble right before their eyes. Eric's eyes burned with fury. You can't do this, Mom, he yelled, his hands trembling. That condo was supposed to secure our future. Our future? I repeated quietly. Or yours? He took a step forward, his face twisted with anger. You're selfish. You only think about yourself. I felt my jaw tighten, but my voice stayed calm. After years of thinking about everyone but myself, I think I've earned that right. Lila began sobbing, her voice rising between hiccups. We were counting on you, Mama Helen. We had plans, dreams, you destroyed them. I met her gaze without blinking. No, Lila. I just stopped letting you build your dreams on my back. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of traffic outside. Then Eric's tone dropped lower, colder. Then at least give us the money. You don't need it all. You can't possibly spend it. I turned toward the window, my reflection faint in the glass. You're right, I said. I don't need all of it, but it's mine. I used part of it to buy a smaller condo. The rest is invested for my old age. He laughed bitterly. You're delusional. You'll die before you ever use it. That did it. I turned to him sharply. Then at least I'll die knowing I wasn't robbed by my own son. Lila gasped, but I didn't care. I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, and held it up. You want to know what else I did, Eric? He narrowed his eyes. What is that? Proof, I said. Recordings. Of every conversation where you two treated me like I was already gone. Every plan you made behind my back. The color drained from his face. You recorded us? Yes, I said simply. Because I needed to make sure I wasn't imagining your cruelty. He lunged toward me, but I stepped back. Don't even try, I warned. These recordings are saved in the cloud and with my lawyer. You can't erase what you said. You've gone crazy, he spat. Maybe, I said, or maybe I finally came to my senses. For a few seconds, everything froze, Eric's clenched fists, Lila's tear-streaked face, my phone glowing faintly in my hand. Then Lila's voice broke the silence. We'll never forgive you for this. I nodded. I can live with that. Eric stormed to the door, his voice shaking with rage. Enjoy your money, Mom. It'll cost you your family. I watched them walk out, their anger echoing down the hall. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from victory. But I had no idea that their anger wouldn't stop at the door, and the next phone call I'd get would prove just how far their bitterness could reach. 3 days passed after that confrontation. The silence felt heavier than ever, like the air before a storm. I thought maybe, just maybe, they had given up. But I was wrong. It was early evening when the call came. I was cooking dinner, humming softly to myself, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed private number. Hello? I answered. There was silence on the other end, followed by a voice I didn't recognize, male, cold, deliberate. Mrs. Grace? Yes, who's speaking? You don't know me, the man said, but I know your son. He told me you owe him a lot of money. Said you're holding what's his. My heart froze. Excuse me? You heard me, he continued, his tone sharp. You have 48 hours to make things right. Otherwise, I'll make sure you regret every second you keep his money. Then he hung up. For a moment, I stood there, phone still pressed to my ear, my pulse roaring in my ears. My son, my own flesh and blood, had sent someone to threaten me. The shock numbed me at first. Then came anger. A slow, burning anger that spread through my chest until I could barely breathe. I called Eric immediately. He didn't answer. I called again. And again. Finally, on the 4th try, he picked up. What now, Mom? He said flatly. Don't you mom me, I snapped. Did you send someone to call me? To threaten me? He hesitated just a second too long. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, Eric. My voice cracked. He said your name. He said you told him I owe you money. I didn't, he started, but I could hear the guilt beneath the calm. You've crossed a line, I said, my voice trembling. You've done terrible things, but this is unforgivable. There was silence. Then, quietly, he said, maybe if you'd just helped us, it wouldn't have come to this. I closed my eyes, fighting the tears. You sent a stranger to scare your mother into giving you money? He didn't answer. I ended the call and sank onto the couch, my hands shaking. For a long time, I just sat there staring at the dark window, my reflection faint against the glass. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing that man's voice echoing in my head, his words cold and sharp. 48 hours. But instead of breaking me, the fear lit something inside me, a calm, dangerous kind of strength. If they wanted war, they'd just declared it. And the next morning, I decided to fight back, not with anger or threats, but with something far more powerful, the truth. The next morning, I woke before dawn. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the faint pink glow creeping through the curtains, and whispered to myself, "It's time." I made coffee, tied my hair back, and opened my laptop. The folder labeled recordings blinked up at me, dozens of audio clips neatly dated and organized. For months, I had collected every cruel conversation, every manipulative word, every lie. Now, they were going to serve a purpose. I selected a few of the clearest ones and copied them to a USB drive. Then I printed out copies of the sale agreement, bank transfer receipts, and the threatening voicemail I had recorded from that mysterious man. I placed everything into a brown envelope and wrote a note on top. For my protection and my peace. Then, I drove to the local police station. The officer at the desk was young, polite, and a little surprised when I told him my story. "Your son sent someone to threaten you?" he asked, brows furrowed. "Yes," I said. "And I have proof of both his intentions and his involvement." I handed him the envelope. He took one look inside and exhaled slowly. "Mrs. Grace, this is serious evidence. We'll open an investigation immediately." "Good," I said quietly. "Because I want to make sure he never tries this with me, or anyone, again." Before I left, the officer gave me his card. "If that man calls again, record everything. We'll trace it." I thanked him and walked out into the sunlight. For the first time in a long time, I felt something powerful, safe. That afternoon, I called Eric. He didn't answer. But a few hours later, he showed up at my new place, banging on the door. "Mom. Open up." His voice was wild, panicked. I opened the door just enough to look him in the eyes. "You don't get to call me Mom anymore," I said calmly. "You crossed that line when you tried to scare me." He looked desperate, his arrogance gone. "What did you do?" "I told the truth," I replied. "To the police." His face went pale. "You reported me?" "Yes," I said. "And next time someone calls me threateningly, they'll be calling a detective instead." He stared at me for a long time, then turned and walked away without another word. I closed the door, leaned against it, and exhaled. The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It was peaceful, the sound of my freedom returning. But peace doesn't come without an ending, and when I saw the envelope left at my door that evening, I knew the final chapter between us had just begun. When I opened my door that evening, a plain white envelope lay on the mat. My name, Helen, was scribbled in Eric's handwriting. No knock, no call, no warning. Just silence. For a long moment, I stood staring at it. My heart wanted to rip it open, my mind told me not to. But curiosity won, as it always does with mothers. Inside was a single handwritten letter. No threats, no manipulation, just words. "Mom, I don't know what to say anymore. You've made your point. I crossed lines I can't undo. Lila left me yesterday, she said she can't live with the kind of man I've become. Maybe she's right. You were always stronger than me. I see that now. I told myself I was trying to build a future for my family, but really, I was just chasing comfort at your expense. You didn't owe me anything. I owed you everything. I'm sorry. Eric." By the time I finished reading, my vision blurred. The tears came quietly, the kind that sting because they're made of both grief and relief. I sat down, holding the letter close. For the first time, it wasn't guilt that filled me, it was peace. Because even if those words had come too late, they had finally come. The next morning, I drove to the park Thomas and I used to visit when we were young. The air was crisp, the sky painted in soft oranges and blues. I sat on our old bench, the wood still etched with his initials beside mine. I pulled out the letter and read it again under the morning sun. Then, slowly, I folded it, kissed it once, and tucked it into my purse. I didn't forgive Eric completely, not yet. But I forgave enough to let go of the weight that had been crushing me for years. When I returned home, I brewed myself a fresh cup of tea and watched the city lights flicker to life outside my window. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for anyone to call. I had my own peace, my own space, my own story, and it belonged entirely to me. I smiled softly and whispered, "You did it, Helen. You finally chose yourself." And in that small, quiet apartment filled with sunlight and freedom, I realized something simple yet profound. Sometimes, love doesn't mean holding on. Sometimes, it means letting go, of them, of the pain, of who you used to be. Because in the end, life isn't about who stays with you, it's about finding the courage to stay with yourself. Sometimes, the people we love the most can hurt us in ways strangers never could. But healing doesn't always come from revenge, sometimes, it's found in the quiet strength of walking away. Helen didn't just sell her condo. She sold her silence, her fear, and the years she spent waiting to be loved. And in the end, she discovered something priceless, that peace isn't given. It's claimed. So if you've ever been taken for granted, or made to feel small, remember Helen's story. Because one day, you might just find the courage to choose yourself.